when we hear the story of Abraham and Isaac, we tend to focus on Abraham. What he went through in that moment when God asked him to take his son, the one that he loved so dearly, the one that was so precious to him, and sacrifice him. And the suffering that could have gone on in his heart, knowing that his cherished treasure, he was about to sacrifice that. And we often forget Isaac. And we need to look at how Isaac could have felt, what he could have thought, what happened in his heart. Because Isaac understood. When you read in Genesis chapter 22 and verse 7, it says, "But Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, 'My father.' And his father said to him, 'Here I am, my son.' Then he said, 'Look, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?'" So Isaac understood what the sacrifice meant. Understood everything that was going to happen when they get to the place where they needed to sacrifice, that they would need to kill an animal, that they would need to burn it. He understood that. But it says here in verse 9, "Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built an altar there and placed the wood in order. And he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood." He bound Isaac his son. So Isaac, his father, must have said to him, "My son, you are the sacrifice. God has asked me to put you on the altar and to sacrifice you." And for Isaac, he was willing. He was willing to lay down his life. He was willing because he knew he was doing it because this is what God desired. This is what God wanted. And I'm sure that Isaac had been told all the promises of God, everything that was going to happen through him. But he was willing that every ambition, every dream, every vision that he had, he was willing to lay it down on that altar on that day. That's why he willingly allowed himself to be bound and to be put on that altar. We read in the book of Matthew, chapter 19 and verse 16, of a rich young man who came to Jesus one day. And it says here, "Now behold, one came and said to him, 'Good teacher, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?' And Jesus responded to him and told him that he needed to keep the commandments. And then he asked Jesus, which ones? In verse 18, and Jesus explains to him, 'You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your mother and your father, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself.' And the young man said to Jesus, 'All these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack?' And Jesus said to him, verse 21, 'If you want to be perfect, go and sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me.'" So this young man was being asked to surrender everything that he had, to lose everything that he had. And in that moment, he had that split second, like Isaac had, when his father must have said to him, "Isaac, you are the sacrifice, my son. Come, I need to bind you and put you on that altar." Right there and then, Isaac was willing. And this young man, when Jesus spoke to him, right there and there, he needed to make a decision. And it says here in verse 22, "But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions." He was not willing to put his life on the altar, to lay his life down. And this is the call of God upon your life and my life, that we surrender to him, because he knows his purposes for our lives. He knows what he's planned for our lives. And my life is not my own. The life that I live should be for Christ. And I want to live for him. And I want to urge you today that God is calling us in these last days to live for him, to surrender to him. The question is, are you willing? Am I willing? I want to urge you today, surrender your life to Christ, because this is how God will fulfill his perfect plan for your life and for my life with a surrendered life. God bless you.